This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Right now, the Cleveland Browns are in a playoff chase. And if they make the playoffs this year, with the stuff that's gone on with this team this year, I would argue this would be one of the most impressive playoff runs a team has made in a very long time, just to get to the playoffs. And I would argue it's the most impressive playoff appearance of the Browns since reactivation. You can even make the argument since even before then, because it wasn't like we had a good team all year and we were able to just make things work and things went our way like it did in the 80s. This was a completely different situation where nothing went wrong. Your schedule was very difficult and you still found the way to win a ton of games this year if you do make it so. So the Browns are in this playoff race. I think this game versus the Jaguars is important. Now, will Trevor Lawrence play? Will he not? I don't know. I'm going to lean towards the side of him playing, right? Now, if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, losing that game against Cincinnati means that you don't really have a ton of room to be flimsy with if you're going to play him or not, because this week you play Cleveland, who can certainly beat you if you don't throw out Trevor Lawrence. Next week you play the Baltimore Ravens, who can certainly beat you if you don't have Trevor Lawrence. Then you play the Buccaneers, the Panthers, and the Titans. Now, look, Jaguars probably going to win those 3 games, probably going to get to 11 wins, probably going to be the division winner in the AFC South. So if they don't play Trevor Lawrence for those 2 weeks and they lose those games, they will ultimately be fine. So the argument can be made, hey, man, maybe we shouldn't risk it. Doug Peterson doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who doesn't mind risking it. I think he will risk it, and I think Trevor Lawrence could play as early as Sunday. I really would expect them to push it with him. But even if Trevor Lawrence plays, we do have to evaluate the Jacksonville Jaguars over what they've been able to do this season and what they haven't been able to do. And one of the things that stands out is that for whatever reason, the Jacksonville Jaguars are a terrible team at home. They're a pretty good road team, though, but they're a terrible home team. They're 3-4 at home. All 4 of their losses have happened at home this year, right? They lost at home versus Kansas City 9-17. Also one of the tougher opponents that they've played. They lost at home against the Houston Texans 17-37, which is a quality opponent in the Houston Texans. And then you go to San Francisco. That was a loss at home 3-34. Which, again, another quality opponent. We're talking about them being one of the best teams in football, and that's when they started that run. And then they lost 31-34 to a Joe Burrow-less Bengals team. Now, look, I do think we got a little carried away, and we tend to get a little carried away after one result. After one game, we tend to rewrite everything as if everything else that happened in that year did not happen. The Bengals beating the Jaguars on Monday Night Football, I don't think should be as surprising as it comes off. Like, I think the Bengals beating the Jaguars was something that was within the range of results that you could expect to happen. That being said, nobody's going to feel great about the Jaguars after they lost that. And the reason I say that about the Bengals, like, they still have T. Higgins. And, you know, part of the evaluation people had of Jake Browning when he was out there was without T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins, that third wide receiver, having those 3 wide receivers all on the field at the same time does put undue stress on a lot of teams and does change things, right? So They had T. Higgins finally. They had Tyler Boyd, and they had Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase has been on an absolute heater as of late. And Jamar Chase played one of the best games of his career in there. And I think Jake Browning probably played one of the best games of his career. But that still is a good Bengals team, right? That still is, outside of Joe Burrow, a Bengals team that's been to 2 straight AFC championship games. And I don't think a team like that just dies because their quarterback got hurt, especially when they have so much support around the quarterback position. So I don't look at that loss that the Jacksonville Jaguars took as some kind of devastating loss. This isn't losing to like the Giants or somebody like that. The Bengals aren't a terrible team, and I don't think we should look at them as a terrible team. But what this does say about the Jacksonville Jaguars is that they are a team that can be got. There are teams that I feel like the Browns, if they played them 9 times, if they played them 10 times, they would have a hard time winning 2 of them in the current state of the Cleveland Browns, right? Those teams to me are Miami because of the speed that they have and the known ability that speed has against man. Like, just Tyreek Hill and man, we're not a good zone coverage team. That's going to be a problem for this Browns defense. So Miami's a team that I'm like, I don't know. I don't love the matchup, right? Not that I think they're a super elite team, but they're a really good team, and I don't love the matchup. Then the other teams are what? I don't know about Baltimore. Like Baltimore, we beat them with half of Deshaun Watson. So I don't feel great about it, but I don't feel good about it. You can maybe throw the Chiefs in there as well, even though they haven't been as good as they've been in past years, but they're still the Kansas City Chiefs and they still employ Pat Mahomes at quarterback. So I wouldn't bet against them. But like if you played the 49ers right now, it's hard for me to think that you could beat them, but it was hard for me to think that you could beat them when you beat them. So who knows with that? Either way, this is my whole point of saying the Jaguars aren't the realm of team that are impossible to beat, even if you're the underdog. And the Cleveland Browns have been a different defense at home than they are on the road. They are an elite defense. And I think if you are an elite something, you have a chance against the Jacksonville Jaguars, because the one thing the Jaguars have struggled with is they don't have a consistent identity as a football team. You look at the Jacksonville Jaguars and you don't think that's a team with an elite defense. Team with a good defense, some good defensive players, but not necessarily an elite Jacksonville Jaguars defense. You look at them offensively and you think of them as a team with a good quarterback, a good running back, but they don't really do anything at a super elite level or known for doing anything at an elite level. Like, that's the big question with the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Cleveland Browns. What do the Jacksonville Jaguars really do offensively, defensively, right? It's an identity question. They don't really have that, right? When you play the Kansas City Chiefs, you know you need to be worried about Pat Mahomes. When you play Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, it's right there in how I said it. When you play the Miami Dolphins, you're worried about all that speed that they got, right? All of these things pop off the chart with you. I have not seen such a thing from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, they might come in here and show me something. Trevor Lawrence might be an elite quarterback and show us something. The Browns haven't necessarily done well against the last 2 good quarterbacks that they've played against. But what I did see in that game versus the Cincinnati Bengals is an offensive line that is vulnerable and a Browns defensive line that really needs to get one. Myles Garrett, a couple weeks after that injury, I expect him to be a little bit better than he's been the last couple games. And, you know, he's due for a get back. I think Dalvin Tomlinson is due for one. I think a lot of guys on that defensive line are due. A lot is going to go into and a lot of talk over this week, especially once we start practices tomorrow. A lot of this talk is going to go about whatever they do with the quarterback situation, right? Are they going to go with DTR? Are they going to go with Joe Flacco? I'm going to be honest with you. You know, I prefer DTR just because he's faster, more athletic. I think you get some of the good throws that you can get with the Joe Flacco. And I think it's a better chance that you can build a consistent offense around DTR for a longer period of time than Joe Flacco. But in this situation for this game, I think both of those quarterbacks are completely serviceable. I think you can win with both quarterbacks, and I think that's a very fortunate situation for the Cleveland Browns to be in. If Joe Flacco plays, I think the Browns have a chance to win this game as long as the defensive line shows up. If DTR plays, I think the Browns have a chance to win this game as long as the defensive line shows up. And I don't really think the percentage of your ability to win changes drastically between either quarterback, if at all. Both quarterbacks I trust to get rid of the ball quickly. Both quarterbacks I trust to be accurate. Both quarterbacks I trust to not take sacks. Both quarterbacks I trust to get in and out of the offense. Both quarterbacks I trust to be able to manage the offense. They both demonstrated the ability to do that. Whichever flavor of ice cream you want to choose, it's still ice cream at the end of the day. It's going to get the job done. So I'm not overly concerned about who plays at quarterback and if one's going to be better than the other. You know where I'm at with Joe. I think Joe Flacco can give you like 80 to 100 good dropbacks, but after that, that's when I start to get worried with them. But if they go with DTR, I'm fine with that. If they go with Joe Flacco, I'm fine with that. I really don't think that's going to be the decision that decides this game. What's going to decide this game is what's decided the last two games for the Cleveland Browns. It's the one thing that nobody wants. Well, not nobody. I think other people want to talk about it, but people aren't focusing on nearly enough because everybody wants to focus on the goofy stuff, right? The wars, the who's sitting on the sidelines and who's not on in the luxury box, the goofy stuff with the contracts and everything else. Everybody wants to focus on that. The football is telling you one thing. The defensive line is what's going to win or lose you every game that you get into. Every signature win that the Browns had, the defensive line has showed up. Every signature loss that the Browns have had this year, the defensive line has not. If you're looking for causation, correlation, there it is. The defense, like I know a lot of people are focusing on the secondary. Oh, it's Denzel Ward being out. And while I think Denzel Ward being out does affect the defense, I don't think it's the whole story. I think a lot of what that secondary does, good, positive, or negative, it feeds off of what the defensive line does. The defensive line has never had a great day and they've been sold out by the secondary. Right. We've never been like, damn, we was getting pressure, but Denzel Ward or Greg Newsome couldn't cover. We ain't said that all year. Usually when we're complaining about corners not being able to cover, we're complaining about the pressure not being there. We're complaining about pocket times being long. That is the problem with the Browns defense. Tackling, it's basic. It's real basic fundamental stuff. They're not tackling well and they're not getting pressure. They're not winning one-on-ones and they're not getting pressure. They do those three things, which they're more than capable of doing. They can win this game. They can win any game left on their schedule. I'm here to tell you, there is no unwinnable game for this Browns team, whether it's DTR or Joe Flacco. Honestly, we're in a fortunate situation. We're in an unfortunate, fortunate situation as Browns fans. Because while it's unfortunate, super unfortunate that Nick Chubb, Deshaun Watson, and everybody else under the sun is hurt. While that sucks, it stinks, it sucks. We're going to play the what if game, whatever. That stinks. The fortunate situation is, I think you have two quarterbacks on this roster that you can win with. And that's amazing. An amazing place to be at, given that those are your third and fourth starting quarterbacks of the season. I think you can win the game with Joe Flacco as long as he avoids making the big fourth quarter mistake like he did last week. You can win the game with DTR. We've seen it. He's made those clutch throws at the end of games before. We've seen it. He was on his way driving back to win the Browns that game against Denver before he got knocked out. I feel fine about both options. I truly do. Think you can win with both. I don't really care about the debate at quarterback. If it's DTR, cool, we're going to win. If it's Joe Flacco, cool, we're going to win. I really don't care. Think both of them are fine enough. Don't see the reason to get into a massive debate with everybody. I know everybody likes to do that with quarterbacks, but there's really no reason to do that. They're both fine enough. This team does not require excellent quarterback play. We haven't had an excellent quarterback game all season. We're 7-5. Like, I guess there's a really good second half versus Baltimore and an excellent game versus the Cardinals, who stink. But other than that, you ain't had it, right? You ain't had it. It ain't walking through this door. You're not getting excellent quarterback play this season. What you're going to get is good enough. And when this defensive line is playing at the level that they're capable of, good enough is good enough. But it starts with the defensive line. It starts with pressure. It starts with attacking guys and tackling them in the backfield on first contact. When the Browns do that, we're great. When we don't, we stink. Run defense. Run defense against Pittsburgh. What was wrong in that game? If you watch my film breakdown on the defensive side of that, missed tackles all over the place. Just didn't tackle Jaylen Warren. Had a chance to stop him for 4. Had a chance to stop him for 2. Had a chance to stop him for a loss. Didn't tackle him. Russell Wilson, Matt Stafford. When you watch my film breakdown this week, when you watch the film breakdown I did last week, no pressure, no problem. They're going to find an open guy because you give wide receivers enough time, they're going to get open. I don't care how good your corners are. They're going to get open. It's about pressure. It's about pressure and tackling. It ain't that complicated. That's the key to victory for the Browns. If they get pressure and they tackle well for the next 5 weeks, they will win all 5 of those games. They can beat Cincinnati if they do that. They can beat the Texans if they do that. They can beat the Jacksonville Jaguars if they do that. They can beat the Bears. They can beat the Jets. They do that, they'll beat those teams. That's how good they are when they do that at that level. But when they don't, then it matters that Joe Flacco or DTR is your quarterback. Then it matters that Jerome Ford is your running back and not in Nick Chubb. Then it matters that your offensive line is not that good. Then it matters that your corners are hurt a little bit. Then it matters that Mike Ford is in the game. Then it matters that Ronnie McLeod's not in the game anymore. Then it matters that all of these things are converging, that JOK likes to take these instinctive jabs and sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. Then it all matters. But if you get pressure and you tackle, don't none of that shit matter. That's been the key to the Browns season. Stuff been going wrong all season, but you know what? We've been getting pressure. We've been tackling well. It didn't matter. Guys have been open. You go back to that San Francisco game, you can count 4 or 5 plays where some guy got open, and it could have been a huge play for the San Francisco 49ers. But you know what? We got pressure and we tackled, and it didn't matter. We want football to be so complicated sometimes, but sometimes we're reminded that football is not that complicated, or it really shouldn't be. Get pressure, tackle. You could be a great team. Don't get pressure. Don't make tackles. You're going to stink. That's what it's up to. Last 2 weeks, the Browns haven't been getting pressure, haven't been getting tackles. They stinked. They stunk. My bad. Wrong word. Well, you do it this week, you will be great. The good news is that you got Myles Garrett, you got Zadarius Smith, you got Obo Okoronkwo, you got Dalvin Tomlinson, you got all these guys. You should be able to do it. Hell, people having bad days, off weeks, it happens. But I trust those guys to be better more than they're not. And when they are, we ain't worried about none of that other shit, man. We can talk about Denzel Ward being in there or not. If Myles Garrett gets more pressure, if the defensive line gets more pressure last week, we're not thinking about Denzel. Well, we're like, oh my God, Greg Newsome held up so well. He was so good in coverage, because you ain't got to worry about that kind of shit when you're getting pressure. That's the thing. Pressure, tackling. That's all they got to do. You want the Browns to win out? That's all they got to do. You want the Browns to make a playoff game, to get to the playoffs and maybe win a playoff game, maybe win 2? That's what they have to do. Now, when you playing Baltimore, when you playing Kansas City, when you playing the Philadelphia Eagles and even the 49ers, that might not be enough. But hell, it was enough to beat the 49ers, so it might be enough. You do those things, you'll play well. You'll win these games. You don't do those things, you'll stink. It's really that simple. The fix is not complicated. And that can be a good thing and that can be a bad thing. But the fix is not complicated. That's my thoughts about where I'm at mentally with this week and why I think that this week is important, that the Browns get back on track and get back to their identity on defense, which is getting pressure and making tackles. That's my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.